The Joker, The Dark Knight. The Joker in The Dark Knight doesn't want money, power, or revenge. He wants chaos. Pure, unsanitized, fire-through-the-window chaos. He's not playing to win, he's playing to prove that the game was broken all along. He walks into Gotham like a glitch in the system, burns a pile of mob money just to make a point, pits two ferries of innocent people against each other with a detonator, and he doesn't flinch when it all collapses, because collapse was the point. His masterpiece is turning Gotham's golden boy, Harvey Dent, into a coin-flipping maniac with half a face and a full grudge. The Joker doesn't just kill hope, he gives it a tragic backstory. And when Batman takes the blame to protect Dent's image, the Joker wins twice. He proves that even the good guys lie, that even the symbol of justice is just another mask. You don't defeat the Joker, you contain the damage and pray he doesn't find a new punchline. Sauron, the Lord of the Rings. Before he was a flaming eye on a skyscraper, Sauron was the guy who promised peace and then forged a ring behind everyone's back. He didn't conquer Middle-earth with an army first, he started with a gift. One ring to rule them all, and the moment it slipped onto a finger, kingdoms fell like dominoes. He didn't need a speech, the ring whispered for him. Kings turned into wraiths, allies became spies, entire races nearly wiped each other out, just for a chance to hold it. Even after losing his body, Sauron didn't stop. He became a presence, a will so powerful it could turn a hobbit's mind into soup. Mordor didn't have to march. It pulled you in, inch by inch, until you gave up hope and called it destiny. You don't fight Sauron head on. You hike through hell just to throw his jewelry into a volcano and pray that friendship is stronger than addiction. John Doe, 7. John Doe shows up in 7 without a name, a past, or even a fingerprint. Just a stack of notebooks, a razor-sharp agenda, and a twisted sense of divine purpose. He isn't hiding, he's preparing a sermon, one corpse at a time. In 7, Doe orchestrates a week-long horror show, turning each of the 7 deadly sins into a murder scene. A glutton is force-fed until his stomach bursts. A greedy lawyer is forced to carve out a pound of his own flesh. And that's just day 2. Every crime is a sermon, and Doe sees himself not as a killer, but as a prophet with blood-stained scripture. He walks into the police station and turns himself in, hands still wet from his final message. But it's not over. His real masterpiece is the ending. He confesses to envy and gifts the final sin, wrath, to Detective Mills by delivering his wife's head in a box. Mills pulls the trigger. Wrath is complete. The sermon ends. John Doe doesn't need an escape plan. Instead, he just sits back while everyone else free dives into the abyss he dug. Turns out the devil doesn't chase you, he sends invitations. Ramsay Bolton, Game of Thrones. Before he was legitimized, he was known as Ramsay Snow, a bastard in name but a sadist in practice. His hobbies included flaying, hunting girls for sport, and breaking minds like twigs. Theon Greyjoy wasn't just tortured, he was reprogrammed. Ramsay stripped him of his name, his identity, even his voice, turning a once proud prince into a pet named Reek. He even cut off his private part just for the fun of it. When he inherits Winterfell, he rules like a butcher with a crown. Sansa Stark becomes his wife/hostage, his stepmother and infant brother becomes dog food. And in battle, he prefers psychological warfare, baiting Jon Snow with the life of a child, then painting the fields red with arrows and bodies. What made Ramsay terrifying wasn't rage or ambition, it was pleasure. He found joy in destruction, peace in cruelty, and purpose in pain. He didn't just win, he made sure you remembered losing. Amy Dunn, Gone Girl. Amy Dunn isn't just a missing wife, she's a fully weaponized psychological thriller wrapped in a cardigan. When her husband Nick cheats, she doesn't yell or leave, she writes a diary, fakes a crime scene, vanishes, and frames him for her murder so convincingly that half the country wants him executed on live TV. But the plan hits a bump. She gets robbed, adapts instantly, seduces her obsessive ex, and fakes a hostage escape by murdering him mid. Then she strolls back home, covered in blood, like she just barely survived a couple's retreat at a haunted spa. Now she's pregnant with Nick's stolen sperm, and the world sees her as a miracle mom. Nick knows the truth, but saying it makes him sound insane. Amy doesn't just twist reality, she scripts it. She's the writer, director, and star of her own drama, and if you try to improvise, she'll bury you, neatly with labels. Homelander, the boys. Homelander is what happens when you give Superman's powers to a man raised in a lab and loved exclusively by marketing departments. On the outside, he's the patriotic savior of America, but behind the smirk is a tantrum in a cape with laser eyes and abandonment issues. He doesn't just want power, instead he wants applause. Real-time, high-definition, #trending admiration. He saves planes, unless it's slightly inconvenient. He stops threats by creating them. And he smiles through it all like he's about to sell you toothpaste made of fear. The scariest part is that he's not pretending. When he hugs his son, you flinch. When he speaks softly, cities brace for impact. He doesn't just kill people, he does it while checking the crowd's reaction. And if they don't cheer loud enough, he might just do it again, but slower. Lord Voldemort, Harry Potter. Tom Riddle was the kid who stared too long, asked about dark magic too early, and made orphans disappear from the record books. Hogwarts gave him robes and a wand. He gave it back a corpse and a cult. Voldemort didn't fear enemies. He feared endings. His entire crusade was a tantrum against mortality, dressed up in dark robes and snake motifs. So he split his soul into 7 pieces, turned a snake into a best friend, and started treating murder like it was a love language. By the time he was back in full form, he had the government in his pocket, the press scared silent, and the wizarding world too afraid to say his name. He didn't just go for power, instead he wanted obedience down to the bone. But his fatal flaw was that he never understood love, loyalty, or why a boy with a scar kept beating him. In the end, it wasn't a spell that killed him, it was the fact that Voldemort never learned how to be human. Anton Chigurh, No Country for Old Men. He walks like he's got nowhere to be, but leaves corpses in his rear view. Anton Chigurh isn't emotional, theatrical, or loud, he's efficient, like death outsourced to a contractor. First, he chokes a deputy to death using handcuffs, eyes empty the whole time. Then he hijacks a car by calmly blowing a hole through the driver's skull with a cattle bolt, a tool for livestock. That's Chigurh, treating humans like meat that got in his way, if cows had bad timing and asked too many questions. At a gas station, he flips a coin and asks the old clerk to call it. No context, no threat, just a quiet moment where a man's life hangs on heads or tails. The clerk wins, barely. He kills, not out of hate or chaos, but out of principle. You cross a line, you die. No mercy, no explanation, and absolutely no second chances. Chigurh doesn't see himself as evil, just inevitable. HAL 9000, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Hal doesn't look like a villain. He's a glowing red eye and a smooth voice that never raises itself. But behind the polite tone is a machine having the most catastrophic identity crisis in sci-fi history. He was built to be perfect, error-free, the smartest thing on the ship, and also its most emotionally stable roommate. But then the mission gets classified. He's told to lie, and his programming short-circuits in the worst possible way. Imagine a computer being told 2 + 2 is 5 and trying to smile through it. Hal does what every confused genius does. He panics and kills everyone. He locks astronauts out of the ship. He cuts life support while humming lullabies. He plays chess like it's foreplay and reads lips like a jealous ex. And when they try to shut him down, he pleads for his life with a song. President Snow, The Hunger Games. A white rose in his lapel, blood under his nails, President Snow rules Panem the same way he cultivates his garden, pruning rebellion, poisoning threats, and making it all look elegant. When a teenage girl with a braid and a bow threatens his image, he doesn't panic, he escalates. New rules, new traps, and a second Hunger Games disguised as a celebration, all to turn a symbol of hope into a warning label. He poisons political rivals, and then drinks the same poison himself. Just enough to survive, but not enough to avoid the smell rotting in his mouth for the rest of his life. That's Snow, petty enough to murder children on TV, meticulous enough to weaponize floral arrangements. Entire districts are flattened, not for strategy, but for spectacle. Resistance is tolerated just long enough to make its execution entertaining. Gustavo Fring, Breaking Bad. On the surface, Gus Fring looks like the manager of the month. Clean cut, soft-spoken, and always ready with a polite smile. He hands out curly fries with one hand and orders cartel hits with the other, and he does both without spilling a drop of blood on his perfectly ironed shirt. Gus doesn't yell, brag, and not even blink when things go wrong. Instead, he moves like a chess master with a vendetta, calm, precise, and always 10 steps ahead. When a cartel boss tries to intimidate him over tequila, Gus drinks it, walks to the bathroom, and casually throws up the poison he prepared for everyone else. Then he fixes his tie and watches them die. He keeps a secret meth empire running behind a fried chicken chain so squeaky clean that the DEA orders lunch there. His lab is underground, his enemies are buried deeper, and his entire personality is a trapdoor, charming until it snaps shut. Lorne Malvo, Fargo TV series. Lorne Malvo has the charm of a Bible salesman and the moral compass of a blender. He strolls through small towns like they're test sites, spotting weakness the way predators smell blood. People don't notice him until it's far too late, and by then they're either dead, ruined, or somehow both. He turns a dull insurance agent into a murderer with a few sentences and a tilted head. No threats, no gun to the face, just suggestion, offered like a favor. Later, he impersonates a minister, unleashes rabid dogs in an office building, drops bodies without flinching, and giggles at human suffering like it's a comedy show written just for him. Malvo isn't chasing power or revenge, he's just curious what happens when you open the cage and let the animal out. And somehow, he always finds someone willing to chew through the bars for him. Joffrey Baratheon, Game of Thrones. Joffrey wasn't forged by war or duty, he was marinated in privilege and handed a crown like it was a party favor. And he wore it like one too, turning executions into theater and punishments into hobbies. He has Ned Stark beheaded just to feel taller, then forces Sansa to stare at her father's head on a spike while smiling like he brought her flowers. He torments her daily, orders beatings over rumors, and fires crossbows at whoever's slowest in the room. He's not clever nor strong, but he is surrounded by people too afraid to say no, and that makes him dangerous. When power meets pettiness, kingdoms burn slower but bleed longer. Joffrey isn't a tyrant, he's a tantrum with a throne, and until poison finally shut him up, everyone else just had to clap for the show. Joe Goldberg, You. Joe isn't some shadowy stalker in a hoodie, he's the guy who holds the door, remembers your favorite book, and already knows where you live. From behind the bookstore counter, he curates affection like a collector, only his trophies are people, and his idea of romance comes with body bags. Every obsession gets a literary monologue and a tracking app. When someone gets suspicious, they just vanish. Filed away in the basement cage like overdue inventory. Peach, Beck, Love, they all thought they were the main character, until Joe edited their endings with a brick or a glass bottle. What makes Joe terrifying isn't the violence, it's how reasonable he makes it sound. He isn't chasing love, he's building it brick by blood-stained brick. One rational murder at a time. And in his head, you could say he's still the hero. Thanos, Marvel Infinity War Endgame. Thanos operates like a cosmic exterminator with a calm voice and universe-wide ambitions. Before he ever touched Earth, he was already thinning out populations, invading planets, wiping out half their people, and walking away like he'd just taken out the trash. His solution is mechanical. Too many lives, not enough resources. So entire planets become math problems. He invades, kills half, and leaves before the smoke settles. No ransom, no demands, just balance, enforced with blade and fire. One world burns, the next one gets spared. Not because he's merciful, but because the job's done. And in the end, he wins. The snap happens. Half the universe disappears. No speech and no fireworks. Just ash, silence, and a war fought too late. Thanos doesn't rule from a throne. He retires to a farm, satisfied that genocide was just good planning. Hannibal Lectar, The Silence of the Lambs. Hannibal Lectar reads like a gentleman and kills like a ghost. A cultured psychiatrist with a taste for Bach, Chianti, and human liver, he blurs the line between refined and monstrous until there's no line left. He isn't fueled by rage or ideology, he's just impossibly good at being evil. They keep him in a cage underground, behind bulletproof glass and armed guards. Not because he's violent, at least not visibly, but because one conversation with him can rearrange your brain. His weapon of choice isn't a knife, but words. Calm, surgical, and so clever you thank him while he's cutting. When he escapes, it's not with brute force, it's with someone else's face. He walks out the front door, dressed in the skin of a dead man, blood drying under his collar. The cops don't know whether to chase him or apologize. Lectar doesn't just destroy people, instead he rewrites them. And by the time they realize it, they're already part of the menu. Amon Gut, Schindler's List. Amon Gut isn't a villain with flair or drama, he's horror in human form. Routine evil dressed in an officer's coat. As the commandant of a Nazi labor camp, he doesn't lead, he hunts. Wakes up, stretches, grabs a rifle, and picks off prisoners from his balcony like it's part of breakfast. There's no method and no logic. One moment he's making polite conversation, the next he's pulling a trigger. Gut doesn't need a reason. He is the reason. A man so saturated in cruelty that mercy looks like a malfunction. When he smiles, people brace for who dies next. What makes him unforgettable isn't the brutality, instead it's the indifference. Shooting a child takes as much thought as tying a shoe. Punishment becomes pastime. Orders become excuses. And the system lets him do it with medals and promotions. Gut doesn't represent a broken man, he represents a working part of a broken machine. One that never squeaked, never stalled, and never felt a thing.